In one sentence, GameChanger is a happiness company. We connect you as mom and dad or grandma and grandpa to the most important game of the week, which is not the Super Bowl, is not a pro sports team playing. It's your kid or grandkid playing. We made a decision almost overnight to make a bet on video streaming. And like within a single business day, we made that decision. We kind of bet the future of the company on it. And to an extent, the rest is history. And so an 18-year-old who was an intern inspired us to find this way to build highlight clips. And so that came out more so, like you said, into 2021. And 150, 200 million highlight clips get created a year. The ability to watch those highlights, consume them, and share them. That's like the main ingredient of the rocket fuel that video has been for us.
Welcome to Subversive, a podcast dedicated to sharing stories from the best consumer subscription apps in the world. We'll bring you lessons for how to grow your consumer subscription business, including insights and inflection points that led to exponential growth from leaders at category-defining companies and innovative startups. Let's get into the show. This episode is brought to you by RevenueCat. The world's best apps use RevenueCat to power purchases, manage customer data, and grow revenue on iOS, Android, and the web. Join more than 100,000 apps that are already using RevenueCat to grow their businesses and track more than $10 billion in spend, including category leaders like OpenAI, Notion, and Ladder. Learn more at revenuecat.com/subversive. My guest today is Sameer Ahuja, President of GameChanger, which is the #1 youth sports app in the United States, used by millions of coaches, parents, and athletes to follow live games, track stats, and stay connected to their teams. In this episode, I talked to Sameer about GameChanger's evolution from a simple scorekeeping tool to a category-defining platform for youth sports, about how GameChanger's unique growth loop powered by live-streamed games has propelled it to nearly 10 million active users and over $100 million in annual revenue, and about Sameer's aspiration to continue expanding GameChanger's platform beyond baseball and softball to additional sports like basketball, soccer, and flag football. All right, welcome, Sameer, to the Subversive Podcast. Excited to be talking to you about GameChanger today, which is the #1 youth sports app in the country, if I'm not mistaken, particularly with baseball and softball. And before we get too far into it, would love to just hear a little bit more about what GameChanger is for those who don't already know.
Sure. Well, thanks, Phil, for having me on. I love talking about GameChanger. In one sentence, GameChanger is a happiness company. We connect you as mom and dad or grandma and grandpa to the most important game of the week, which is not the Super Bowl, is not a pro sports team playing. It's your kid or grandkid playing. And we do that through our app, which allows you to capture content, stats, scores, and video. And as a family, you can watch it the way you would watch pro or collegiate sports.
Well, and I'll say I have two daughters, Kinley and Liana, who are 8 and 6. And Kinley just got really into softball. And so they're not using GameChanger yet, but I'm about to sell their coach on GameChanger. So I'm excited for them to start using it soon. Let's talk a little bit more about your professional background. What did you do before you joined GameChanger in 2017?
Sure. Well, including GameChanger, it's my 4th startup in a row. I started my career in management consulting and investment banking and quickly got the entrepreneurial bug and have served as a founder, CEO, COO, kind of in a core leadership position of 4 startups, 2 fintech, one was actually sports and entertainment, and then this one. And then this is by far the longest thing I've done and the most exciting thing. I wouldn't necessarily recommend 4 startups in 4 industries to anyone, but that was my career path. And I love learning new things and building new things. And I think that helped me come in here and really kind of get a chance to really go deep in youth sports.
Well, I'm with you. I started my career as a consultant and spent a few years in venture capital and like you, got the entrepreneurial bug and have mostly been doing that type of work since. But as you said, This has been your longest run. You've been at GameChanger over 8 years now. So my understanding is you joined shortly after Dick's Sporting Goods acquired GameChanger in 2016. You got brought in as VP of Finance and Analytics in 2017. What did the company look like when you first joined, and how has your role evolved over these last 8 years?
Yeah, it was an amazing company, an amazing product, quite small relative to today. We had about 40 people and we had about 1 million users, very, clearly product market fit in its core business. I was lucky enough to be introduced to the founders and I met with them, and it was just 2 months after the acquisition by Dick's. And within 3 weeks of meeting them, we arrived at a alignment for them to make me an offer. And I saw an opportunity to just join a great team. Honestly, the role was secondary to the great product. I had been coaching my daughters. I have they're older now, but similar, 2 or 3 years apart, is like yours. And I love coaching. And my biggest takeaway from that moment was sometimes you have to, jump into the unknown. And I guess that's kind of an entrepreneur's mentality. I've been so fortunate because over that time, at the end of a couple of years there, the founders had moved on. They'd done an amazing job, and they went on to do other things. And I was asked by the Dick's Sporting Goods team in 2019 to lead the business, and I've been doing that since then. And it has been just the most incredible, career experience I've ever had.
So let's dive a little bit more into that story, and let's start with the evolution of GameChanger from a simple scorekeeping app to now the largest youth sports platform in the US for scorekeeping, live stream video, and a number of other features. What did GameChanger's product and team look like when you joined? And what pain points were you already solving better than anyone else at that time?
And to answer that, I'll just say a little bit about the origin. And by the way, as an aside, I think if you come into an organization and you take over for the founders, you should be a student of history. You should talk to them and understand where the company came from. And I spent a lot of time talking to early teammates who had departed, and of course, the founders, investors. Fundamentally, post the launch of the iPhone in that era, the fundamental premise was digitize scorekeeping, which was a huge cultural thing in baseball to begin with, and make people's lives easier. So they didn't have to go and calculate stats and erase things on a book. So here you have a smartphone, you have an app, and you can digitize scorekeeping. That created a data stream that didn't exist as electronic data before then in the world, which was the flow of the game at youth. And so that was able to be turned into a fan experience. Fast forward to 2016, 17, at the time of the acquisition, and when I joined, that was the fundamental product. And it was so cool because of how powerful it was. It solved this fundamental need and pain point for coaches who were also there, as you may experience if you coach, like to help the kids, right? Especially as you go into younger ages, it's a little bit of, like watching them, and it's a little bit of babysitting almost. And you have to be there for the kids. You have to be there for the parents. And this was a thing that takes away from that. So we made it really, really simple. And I mean, honestly, to this day, that's still a fundamental part of what we do.
And so what have you done over the last, call it 8 years, to build on that foundation? What are some of the other features GameChanger has invested in to take it from scorekeeping to a much broader suite of product offering?
We've transformed the viewing experience, and this, I think, has been driven by the fact that once we saw this stream of data and once we had a fan experience, we realized the fan, and that's our internal word for the family members and people interested in the games, we could deliver an even better and better viewing experience. The coach was critical, but the fan was equally critical. So you had kind of a two-sided situation. So as we focused more on the fan, we said, wow, we could make this experience a lot better. And the fundamental thing we did was combine the scoring, which was the origin capability, with video. And now you had the ability to move towards a professional level quality video experience. And that, I would say, is less of a pain point solve for the coach, although coaches do use the video for training and performance and all that for the kids, but just became about, I can watch my kids in the way I would watch something else. And it just took off. I mean, we after we started it, I mean, it became such that it now feels like in youth sports, and we're not the only ones who've delivered on this, our whole industry has, that watching your kids play on video is table stakes. That's just become assumed. Many games haven't yet been covered, and there's a lot of opportunity ahead of us, but that we believe that's table stakes. And no different than you just assume. Years ago, you assumed you could watch your local pro team on TV. Today, you assume, or for many years, you could watch any pro team, any collegiate team on streaming. Now the assumption is I can watch any of my kids' games in any sport, in any level of play. So a long way to go for that to be the case, but it's clear that we can get there.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And we're going to come back to the importance of video streaming in a moment when we talk about the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact that had on youth sports and on GameChanger's business. But in the meantime, I'd love to talk a little bit more about this two-sided network that you brought up, right? You've got coaches on the one side, and then you've got youth athletes and their families and the broader fan base on the other. And so what are some of the opportunities and challenges that have come up as a result of needing to build a consumer app that serves so many different user groups?
Yeah, it's something we to this day deal with. So the coach and the person kind of managing the organization, the team, it's a utility product in the best sense. And there's a need for just as quickly as possible, take as much friction away from what I need to do. And that sometimes is in conflict with the reason the parents or family members will go into the app, because they want to see content. So we've had this kind of debate about, like, do you go in and do you immediately see like a lot of videos, or do you like get this flow of setting up your team and the schedule and the logistics? And that, to this day, we're still kind of debating that. And then the other piece is, and we've made moves in this direction, there were a bunch of things that facilitated getting to the moment of content creation, without which there's nothing for the families to consume. And so we've done more and more and more to move away, backward in time, call it, from content creation, which is at the moment of gameplay, to create more logistical features. So you know, of course, you have rosters and schedules and maps of where the game is, and the ability to kind of message the team. So there's all this set of features that are that just ensure that the game is played, and that you know, content has even a chance to be created. Those features are a little bit kind of a table stakes commodity and not really part of the flow towards content generation, which of course is also where we see monetization. And so we've had a lot of push pull of like where to prioritize. Some of it's even just resourcing. And at some point we dedicated product teams to what we call the coach and the fan, and we'd have to make some trade-offs. And even now, I think a really interesting challenge, and we'll talk more about it later, is that the coach persona is changing because there's larger organizations. So the decision-making that might have been at a coach level might happen at a league level now. And that's adding a whole new complexity to what we do.
Yeah, I am excited to talk more about that. For now, let's talk about how these different constituencies within your customer ecosystem help to fuel some of the growth loops that have propelled GameChanger's ascension. So walk me through from the moment a new team is formed. Typically, it's the coach doing that. And so they're using more utilitarian features like rostering the players on their team, inviting their family members, sending out schedules of upcoming games and practices. How does that beginning of a new activated team's journey then lead to growth through word of mouth that's driven in large part by the youth athletes and their families?
Yeah, so as you said, coach starts, they have a roster from whatever organization they're part of. The athlete information is in there, but the user, as we look at it, is the adult, so a parent or guardian. And so their information is inputted by the coach. One of the interesting, cool things is that gives us acquisition of the parents, the guardians, without any additional work beyond what the coach does. So we've done a lot of stuff to make that really easy. Like, by the way, really hard maybe to type into the phone all of the email addresses of, 20 guardians. So there's this nice, seemingly simple, but link to the web. So you can go on your computer and type it in. And, that sounds actually still a little bit like, not like the most modern thing, but it makes a huge difference. The parents, guardians get an invite once the roster is set up. And they have the invite is to download the app. They then claim their athlete, which, allows for really robust parent-athlete association. And then some really cool things happen. So you have all the logistics and you know where the games are. And then coach or someone on the team starts capturing stats, starts recording the game if they're doing video streaming. And then there's this whole flow of prompts and notifications that that inspire interaction by the families. So there'll be reminders and notifications on email and sort of in-app and on phone around games starting. There'll be notifications around an event during the game. And then that'll happen after the game as well, and kind of inspire people to come in and if they missed a game. And going back many years, we saw that if a team created content around 4 or 5 games or more, and a rec team might have a 12-game season, a higher end team might have 20, 30-game season, or a high school team might. If they got over 4 or 5 games, then they were going to create content for the whole season. That's like, I would hate to watch a show on Netflix and then they stop 5 episodes in and I'm really into it and they don't have the rest. And then what we also saw on the user parent side is there were a certain number, if they took a certain number of actions and interacted a certain amount of time with the experience, they would stay for the whole season. And then typically, the average user stays for 6 or 7 years, which is pretty cool.
Got it. Okay, so as I understand it, you have the coaches. The coaches, by and large, are the ones forming the teams, but then they very quickly invite dozens of different youth athletes and their parents or guardians. Yeah. And then because there are all of these interactive features, you've got the scorekeeping, you have advanced stats, you now have live streaming. That creates a strong network effect that makes it very difficult for teams to switch off of GameChanger because you've got coaches, parents, athletes, and fans connected to it. And then there are all sorts of other benefits to the broader fan ecosystem around that team, particularly if it's a high school or a select team, a really competitive team. You might even have non-family members who are interested in tuning in or following. But at the center of all of that, you still have scorekeeping. And so why was scorekeeping such a powerful wedge for GameChanger to become the number one player in this space?
Yeah. Well, as you said at the outset, a lot of our origin, a lot of our activities in baseball and softball, and it is the deepest stat culture. And that isn't just for saying you captured stats. It's a sport where the stats are critical to player development. And as we know, it went from original stats in baseball, softball for 100 years to what was called sort of more advanced stats and sabermetrics and all that. And then to even what I would, around some of like physical movement, like, bat velocity and ball velocity and all these kind of things that require additional equipment to track. This is at the pro level. All of those metrics have shown to correlate well with player development. And so coaches want that. And they want to be able to train and elevate the kids with that information. And so the scorekeeping of the games gives you that data. And of course, you can calculate all the advanced stats, basically instantaneously in the background. To this day is critical. By the way, there are other sports where less stats are captured or stats are less popular. And that's totally fine. And there's some different ways to think about it. And then the other thing, you didn't explicitly ask this, but why scorekeeping and stat capture has remained critical in the video streaming era is that for a bunch of years, the way to really align the context of what the video is showing you is the scorekeeping.
Yep.
So you go to a random video platform and they're great. And you might see a video, that's nice. But if you watch sports on TV or streaming, you expect pro sports or collegiate sports, you expect the context. Baseball game, you want that little box usually on the bottom right. Mm-hmm. So it's weird to look at a youth sports baseball or softball game and see nothing. And so that comes from scorekeeping. It's interesting, and no one could have predicted how we went, but it's interesting, I think potentially has been beneficial that the origin of GameChanger was scorekeeping and then into video versus the other way around. Because even though it's just manipulating numbers, it's actually a lot of technical work behind the scenes to ensure speed, reliability, quality, and the real-time element of it. That people sometimes don't realize how complex that is. We have just a tremendous engineering team on that, and they've been at it for 15 years.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And what I want to get into now is the COVID pandemic and how that created this window of opportunity to go all in on live stream video in a way that really met a pain point for coaches, players, families, and fans that they hadn't experienced to the same degree before the pandemic. So the COVID pandemic hits in 2020. Youth sports changed overnight. Coaches, parents, athletes, fans are looking for more connection. What were you hearing from your users at that time?
That moment was, of course, seminal to what GameChanger is today, and also, I think, seminal to the group of leaders and the team that kind of took the mantle from the founders because it was around that time, 19 into 20. And really interesting, because of the nature of what was going on in the world, we actually weren't hearing a lot directly from our users. One of the so game activity, particularly, certainly March, April of 2020, game activity was minus 99.9%. So it was zero.
Wow.
Interestingly enough, being a subscription business, our subscriptions were flat. They didn't grow for sure, and we think that's a testament to just the love people have for our product. We would get some feedback like, "Oh, we hope everything's okay," and all that, but there wasn't a lot of, "Okay, here's what you should do." Where we heard feedback, and this makes it such a personal and powerful story, I think, is all of us, there was only 450 people on the team, we were just experiencing this new world in everything we do. And my version of that, in addition to all of us, being on Zoom or other services, playing board games with friends or school, of course, the one that really stands out for me is my mom was very active in her temple locally in she lives near us. And, she was in her late 70s at the time, used a phone, but immediately ramped up the curve of Zoom and video. And of course, we helped her. And you had all these people many who were not savvy phone users or tablet users doing all their religious services on Zoom. And I'm like, this is just the new normal. And it was less about, does this stay normal? I'm like, if this is how we're always going to be, we got bigger problems. But this massive adoption of the ease of video, and you have grandparents and all this, who's a big part of our segment doing this, we have to think about what this means. So it was more just seeing other examples of massive video adoption, even quirky ones that we wouldn't want to keep going into the future, like playing board games with friends on video or whatever. But we said, and this is also, and I have a lot to say on this because it was such an important point. We made a decision almost overnight to make a bet on video streaming. It was kind of in everyone's subconscious. We came in, not physically. There was a Friday in late March where we brought our core leaders together and we reached out to our oversight folks at Dick's Sporting Goods. And we said, we want to build video streaming. And we talked about it. And within a single business day, we made that decision. We kind of bet the future of the company on it. And we launched the MVP in Labor Day, and to an extent, the rest is history.
So let's zoom in on that, because that's such an exciting and unusual moment you're describing. I feel like you were still a small company at that point, so it's easier to make a bet the company decision in a business day, but still a big move that it sounds like happened within a 24-hour period. So take me inside the digital conversations that were happening over Zoom at that time, and what were people excited about, and maybe what were some of the risks or concerns that were raised?
The conversations were preceded by some overwhelming gut feeling and instinct. And I don't want this to just be conversation about what I did, but it was pretty small teams, about 50 of us. We had 3 or 4 key executives. And I actually, it was like the 27th or 28th of March. And I remember thinking back then to the first week of March. I'd gone into the office on the 6th or 5th of March. And I'm going in and I'm like, what is going on? Why are we doing this? Because people were already a little anxious. I remember we went in that day and I didn't even know if I could do it. Although I guess I could. I talked to the team. I'm like, we have to shut the office. And this was a few days before New York, really shut down. The NBA, I remember, shut down on the 11th. And so we had this okay, we see what's going on. We have this kind of gut instinct. I had another feeling like that around the 26th, 27th of March. So first conversation, reached out to his single point of contact on the executive team at Dick's, was kind of our liaison for kind of oversight from our parent company. His name was Lee. And I called him up and I said, Lee, we have no idea what's going on. Companies are talking about furloughing people. There's an uncertainty. Again, this was March, of when gameplay comes back. This notion of being outdoors is better hadn't really crystallized, right?
Yep.
And I said, look, we really don't know what to do. What do you think if we build video streaming? And, we're going to need some support from you all. And, maybe who knows what we need in terms of resourcing. And he called me back and he talked to a couple other people there. And he said, well, if you can build this by September, we really support you. And I said, that's kind of a crazy timeline. We don't even exactly know what we want to build. Our team's very good at figuring these things out, but I'll call you back in 2 hours. And I called up our head of product, head of engineering. That was our core executive team, the three of us. And I said, I think we should do this. I don't have a real detailed plan. We think people are going to want this. And can you build it by Labor Day?
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of think there's only one answer to this question, like wink, wink, on video. And of course, they did the right thing, which is hold their ground. And they're like, Samir, give us 2 hours.
Yep.
And they came back, and we had to then decide to stop something else. And they probably were thinking, Samir like really wants to do this, and we don't know what's going to happen. Do we have to lay people off? Like everyone was like thinking of all extreme situations. So they came back and they said they could do it. And I called up our oversight folks at Dick's, and I said we would do it. And I mean, this was literally this was a Friday, and I don't want it to come across as like, we're not thoughtful and all that. But when your back's against the wall that way, if the world is zigging, you have to zag, and you have to, like, sometimes you have to make these kind of calls. Like it was that moment. It was not a moment to plan a long presentation over 30, 45 days. It was just go and do it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And good for you guys. I remember being at Quizlet at the time, and we had our own version of that where suddenly schools were just shutting down everywhere. And teachers were out of the classroom, students were out of the classroom. Everybody was trying to figure out how to transition to remote learning, but there was no playbook for this. And one of the things that the Quizlet executive team did, and I'll never forget, I'm very, very proud of Quizlet for doing this, is they decided to give away free or heavily discounted teacher subscriptions for a year to help teachers through that transition. So, sometimes when the world is upside down, you just have to make decisions quickly, and good for you guys for doing that. So then fast forward to, I think it was right at the beginning of 2021, where the live streaming product went fully public. How did the product come together, and what trade-offs did you have to make to get the product shipped so quickly?
In terms of how it came together and in the trade-off, I think it's kind of all hand in hand. Company-wide trade-off, we were building at the time, given our legacy in diamond sports and baseball, softball, we were building scorekeeping functionality in basketball. And we actually had to stop that. And we remain multi-sport to this day, and we've scaled a lot in basketball, but we had to make what felt like a very tough decision. Mm-hmm. But it just felt like the right moment to do it. So we kind of put that aside. And then when you get into the product build, and this is where our product organization is, just really exceptional. And we had, again, small teams. We had a handful of product managers. One of them, Aman Lumba, today is our SVP of product management and design. He led the product side of this effort and is among the best people I've ever seen at making really good, tough trade-offs and telling me when I have to make a trade-off that, I don't want to. And we didn't initially, and we've continued to this day to make it better, and it's gotten amazing, but we didn't emphasize as the number one thing the quality of the video. Mm-hmm. And we went with the belief that seeing video would be magical for these families because they saw nothing before, unless maybe they were at the game and they took a video clip. And so what we emphasized was the connection of the stats, the score. It was initially scores, and then we added more things because we said you just get all of it. It was like not. We didn't want it to feel like, okay, here's a separate thing that you can have, but it was one unified thing. So from the moment we launched, even the MVP, there was a little scoreboard thing on the bottom, and so it wasn't about optimizing the video, optimizing the angle. I'm like, just give them something. And the player, your kid on second base looked really small, but it just kind of worked. And I guess people were kind of used to weird video moments with the pandemic going on. And one other really cool story, and again, like these things really stick with you. We had so our aperture was focused in one direction. We're all, let's call it, adults working on the team. And we actually had an intern who was a high school, college student. And he wasn't on the tech side or the build side. He was in our marketing org, but he was watching the build, and he reached out to a few of us and he said, you're building live streaming. That's amazing. We want highlight clips. That is about the most obvious thing anyone could say today, but maybe it wasn't really obvious to us. We had our heads in the sand, kind of focused on the work. And so an 18-year-old, his name is Sam, who was an intern, inspired us to find this way to build highlight clips. And so that came out more so, like you said, into 2021. And 150, 200 million highlight clips get created a year. The highlights are a robust component of our premium tier, and people are just absolutely enamored by it. And of course, in a somewhat short form video culture that we live in, the ability to watch those highlights, consume them, and share them has been major. That's like the main ingredient of the rocket fuel that video has been for us.
This episode is brought to you by Paddle. Today's fastest growing apps are multi-channel. They use web monetization to reach new audiences, improve attribution, and boost margins. But selling on the web gets complicated fast. Managing currencies, taxes, fraud, and disputes gets increasingly difficult as companies scale. Paddle solves this. As the merchant of record for thousands of apps, including Runna, GoodNotes, Codeway, and HubX, they take on the complexity of web monetization so you can focus on growing your business. Learn more at paddle.com/subversive. So there's so many things I love about that story. One is you started with your core, which was scorekeeping, but then you built around that this live stream video experience that leaned into the multi-constituency nature of your product, right? And it built these stronger network effects between the coaches, the athletes, the parents, and the fans. And then that unlocked all of these additional creative opportunities around highlight clips and other advanced stats that you wouldn't have been able to have done as effectively without live streaming. How did all of that innovation that came out of this crisis of the COVID pandemic lead to stronger network effects? And then how did those stronger network effects continue to accelerate the company's organic user acquisition flywheel?
Yeah. The ability to share the content. There was some sharing of content with stats and the prior game stream. You could download a PDF of your stats, right? But the sharing of video highlight clips, and the clips in particular, could be done in the app, but of course outside the app to your phone to anywhere. That we had a step change in the community size of fans, of adults, like not a consistent linear growth, like a big change. And we saw the amount of sharing that was happening, we think was happening within the team community and driving more users, because not, even if a parent was really focused on what the kids was doing, they may not, have downloaded the app or be focused on it. So we think that inspired more and more people to kind of come back into the product who weren't using it. And then the other thing, because the coach makes the decision to use GameChanger and create content, and is motivated to this day by the value of the stats to be a better coach. But now you had parents who weren't coaches asking the coach to ensure that they were streaming. You had grandparents saying, reaching out, whether it's through the parents or directly to the coach, saying, I really hope you're streaming this year. And so that just all perpetuated on itself. And we think it also kind of worked, in the broader community, because now, if you had like one team now had this ability, then the opponents they're playing. And I mean, the sharing is it's so exponential where stuff gets shared. And then that, I mean, I think to this day, we're building on that virality.
Yeah, I love that. And obviously not every consumer product has the benefit of building for a community of people that, can drive a lot of organic growth if you build the right products and features. But in this particular case, it makes so much sense. And I mentioned that my older daughter, Kinley, just started playing softball last year. It just so happens that she joined this team called the Sea Monsters that had an almost undefeated season and ended up going to the playoffs. And so over the course of this, 2-month season, a lot of the parents became very close, and we would show up to the games and watch together, and we would build these relationships. And then when the championship weekend happened, everybody was so excited about it. And this was without a platform like GameChanger. But part of the reason I'm so excited to introduce it to the coaches there is because I can only imagine how much more excitement there would have been if you can actually have the video content of what happened in the game. I missed a couple games, so I would have loved to go back and see what happened. And then also be able to see the stats. And these are 8-year-olds, but still, like, being able to see, okay, what is my daughter's batting average? And what are her other stats looking like, and how has she improved over the course of a season is so compelling. So let's use that as a transition into the last topic I wanted to talk about, which is where you see GameChanger going over the next 5 years. And maybe we start with, you've articulated a vision for GameChanger to be the home of youth sports. What does that mean to you and the executive team at Dick's and at GameChanger? And what steps is the company currently taking to get there?
The youth sports experience is what we call Monday to Sunday, January to December, across what we call pregame to postgame. You get ready for the game in pregame, which is all the logistics and everything. You play the game in game day and capture the content, and you get better and advance and learn from the game in postgame, coaching and training. GameChanger has focused on the game day component in the middle. I'm thrilled, that we've been able to find a wonderful product, wonderful market, and we've been able to create a really robust business around it and give a lot of value and happiness to people. But it's a component of what they do. You can look at this in how the TAM is described. The digital and content TAM in youth sports is maybe 7 or 8 billion, but the overall TAM is 40 or 50 billion. And so we also hear, and my favorite version of this was the one parent who said they have 11 apps on their phone. We want to create a world where there's a lot more seamless ability to interact with everything you need digitally. And that, we believe, is integrating everything from the moment you think about playing youth sports. So finding opportunities, which might be at a school that, your kid's connected to, it might be outside the school, to getting involved and registering, figuring out what equipment you need. Many sports are unplayable without a form of equipment, some more than others. And then getting to the games, enjoying the games and the experiences, learning from them, getting the content so you can share it and celebrate it, and getting better. There is a massive amount of technology opportunity in all of those areas. Unlike certain youth sports is early in major technology disruption that other sectors have had, certainly, very large things like health tech or fintech. And also we find, and I generally believe that technology innovation is deflationary. So we think that we can ultimately reduce costs, which is going to help the families of America. Focusing on game day and content and the family as the ultimate user, expanding services and have a plan to expand products and services across this ecosystem. That is what we believe is the home of youth sports. I want you to, as a family and an athlete, go and play the games in amazing places and do everything else on GameChanger. So long way to go. There are others trying to think about this, but it's still early days. But we think our connection to the family and our focus on what we think is most valuable piece of the most valuable thing in youth sports after the kids themselves, which is the content, because that's your memories, it's your photo albums. That's kind of the center of how we're going to then expand out. We want everything tied back to the game and the content and the family.
That makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting that you started with coaches and with a more utilitarian product around scorekeeping, but now you've evolved into a product that's increasingly geared towards families and their athletes and the content that comes out of these games. And so this relates to another question I was going to ask you about. So it's been almost a decade since you joined in 2017. And earlier this year, you did a lot of work to launch what is now the most advanced version of GameChanger to date, which also includes updating your subscription plans. And so what were some of the key changes that were included in that launch?
Yeah, we're really excited because this new version, this new upgrade is the most comprehensive and best GameChanger product ever in 15 plus years. We thought a lot about enhancing first the experience for fans and families and elevated the video experience to a new level of quality, to 1080 HD. We added in automatic highlight reels, the way you might get on your phone, when you get a notification about like photos from a year ago. We have those highlight reels, and a suite of really, really interesting and exciting new coach tools, because the coach, again, is still the gateway to where we want to go. Smart coaching tools. So you have automatic lineup recommendations. You have game insights, so you can point out, leveraging the stat capture, ways that the team or individuals could improve, in-game spray charts, and 15 other features, and dozens more actually coming later this year as well. And it's really, really exciting because what we're telling our community is you're going to live the game like never before. The coaches are going to be coached smarter. You're going to be able to replay the action. You're going to be able to enjoy the live experience better than ever and replay the action in a way that you can't. And what's so important to us, and because we care so deeply about the community, is we like to align value with what we're asking our users to do in terms of using our app and, frankly, paying for it. And so we took a look at our packaging and pricing, and have always had a very robust free tier. And what we did is we bolstered the free tier with some new features like game alerts, and then we asked our users that if they want to consume the much more enhanced live streaming experience, to go into our first paid tier, our plus tier. What has always been in our highest paid tier from 2020 onwards, our premium tier, is post-game video like highlights and watching the game afterwards. But with the quality of the video that we now have and the excitement to keep investing in it, we're asking our users to subscribe for the plus tier to get live streaming. And what we're doing to kind of help them with that transition actually is your first 5 games in a calendar year live will remain free, but after that we're asking you to go up to the plus tier. And we have a lot of users who watch 15, 20, 25 games. Their athletes, their kids, sometimes playing on 2 teams. So maybe first half of the year, second half of the year, they could have 30 games. And so we think, in talking to users, there's a lot of understanding that there's logic to this, that, as people get more intensively interacting with video, that there's an ask for them to subscribe.
Yeah, well, this is all very exciting. And as somebody who, as I said, has a couple of youth athletes in my own family, I'm interested to use the product features myself. I'll also make one more analogy to Quizlet. When I was at Quizlet, and this is true of a lot of education technology companies, it tends to be a very mission-driven culture. And so sometimes you have employees who say, well, why do we need to charge anything? Everything should just be free. The problem with that is you need a business in order to be able to sustain the operations of the product. And what I love about freemium business models is it doesn't have to be a zero-sum game, right? The more you innovate and the more you add value to your core product experience, you can monetize that value with the people who are willing and able to pay for it. But that allows the business to continue subsidizing the free usage of the product for those who aren't interested in paying for a subscription. And so I think there's a real win-win there. And it sounds like that's the direction you're going in with your Diamond Sports business. Let's talk a little bit more about what you all call emerging sports. So sports outside of baseball and softball that you are investing in for the future. What is your plan for expanding increasingly into other sports, since you already do have operations in other sports? And which of those sports are you currently most excited about in the near term?
Yeah, we are absolutely committed to our emerging sports, in particular basketball. And we've had a lot of traction there, and we're probably one of the leaders there. But we want to get to the level of impact and the community that we have built in Diamond Sports in basketball. You can use the GameChanger product for any sport. You can do basic, without a lot of scorekeeping. You can do live streaming. You can do all the other kind of team management tools. But you really need to invest. What we found is you have to have a product and how you talk to users, authenticity in the sport. You'll have families with kids playing multiple sports, but the culture of each sport, even at the youth level, is so unique. So we are investing heavily in building a team that really is connected to basketball culture and speaks to that audience. And that's not just for marketing and all of that. It's for how the product is built. And to what we talked about a little while ago, the scorekeeping culture is very different. The video culture is very different. And as everyone knows, the pace of play is very different. And the courts are different size-wise. So we're customizing everything we do for the sport of basketball. It's the largest participation sport in the United States, just a shade ahead of Diamond Sports. And we are absolutely committed to it. I mean, the investment is really, really significant. We have dedicated teams on it. And I've spent a lot of the last several months going to a lot of basketball tournaments and just really absorbing the culture. I played like anyone might. I wasn't like a deep athlete in basketball, but I've fallen for it. I'm all in on basketball, and I think maybe we get a chance to speak later in the year or something. We'll have. We get to the winter season, the basketball product, GameChanger, will be transformed.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I mean, I grew up playing soccer. My dad was a basketball player his whole life. And so it's great that you are increasingly finding ways to take the revenue that you're earning from your core diamond sports business and invest it in innovation across some of these other sports. Last question before we get to our lightning round. How do you expect AI to change the world of youth sports in the coming years? Or how is it already starting to change the world of youth sports?
Well, we try and stay focused on true use cases and avoid some of the kind of like sizzle excitement. We want to take all the friction of capturing content away. And while it is a little bit a ways, we want you to take a device or a camera, mobile device or some camera, point it at a field, court, rink, diamond, some place where you're playing sports, press a button, walk away, and capture everything you need to give the coach all the insight they need to be better and smarter coaches, and families and fans everything they need to relive the memories and enjoy the game. That is going to require, for the most part, a very sophisticated and successful implementation of computer vision, the way obviously cars might drive themselves, because we want to see the field of play and arrive at those conclusions. We're making a lot of investment there. There's a long way to go. We're actually manifesting a lot of that in production in basketball, more quickly than Diamond, because it's a newer opportunity and it's a very fast pace of play. You have a lot of great new companies, startups thinking about this. So we also talk to a lot of folks and we'll partner with people. But that's really where we want to manifest it. Of course, there's a lot of other obvious things that you can do. But that's the ultimate thing we can do. The ultimate pain point is taking all the work of capturing all this content away. Given the fragmentation of youth sports versus pro, you're going to need for that to occur on very mobility-oriented devices, whether that's a mobile phone or streaming cameras. And then you get into all sorts of interesting questions about what you can do on the edge versus in the cloud and compression of video and all that. So we're actively thinking a lot. And of course, the mobile ecosystem is driven by some, companies people have heard of like Apple and all that. So there's there's a lot of, we're going to leverage platforms like that where we can build, a really great experience.
Yeah, well, it's a very exciting future you paint there. And one of the things that I love that you started with is make sure you're not building technology in search of a problem. Like start with the real human use case. And oftentimes it's the unsexy problems, right? It's just the capturing all the stats and all the manual work that used to go into handwriting stats for a baseball or softball game. You guys solved that a long time ago, but now with some of these more advanced analytics and different ways of looking at team or individual player performance, I feel like there's a lot that AI can do there. So let's get into our lightning round. I'm just going to ask you a few rapid fire questions and would love to get quick responses from you. The first one that I always ask is, what's the best part about working at GameChanger? And what's one thing that you would change or are actively working to change since you're the leader of the company?
The best part is the people, that is the teammates and the families and athletes in the youth sports ecosystem. We love the people that we work with and are connected to. And the one thing that I would change is I would love to see all those people more. We have been benefited by attracting talent at every corner of the country, and that is incredible. And that's how we're going to keep working. I wish I could snap my fingers and teleport to see all of our teammates all the time. That's just maybe someone's working on that.
It's one of the lasting after effects of the pandemic is we still have a lot of people who are working remotely, and there's certainly advantages to that. I mean, as a father of young children during the pandemic, I benefited from it, but I think there are a lot of us who miss the in-office culture. And so as a company leader, I can understand why you would feel that way. Next question is, besides GameChanger, what's your favorite consumer subscription app and why?
Unexpected answer. I'm not going to talk about some Gen AI app, but we all use all of them. And I'm going to show this clip to my wife, because I now obsessively, because of her and to support families, what we need as a family use Todoist, which is this fairly straightforward task app for things. And I was avoiding it, and I've learned how to use it. It's really easy to use, and all of our family to-dos for the kids or myself. So I know there's others. This is not a new category, but I use that one a lot. And so, in addition to some of the obvious social media and Gen AI apps, that's kind of, so, one that's been around for a while, but one that I'm absolutely committed to using a lot. Now I'm going to show this part of the clip to my wife so she knows.
As you should. I'm going to have to check that out, because oftentimes when I ask this question, I get the Duolingos and the Calms and the Stravas, and those are all great companies. But
they're great.
We're right at the stage in our own family where we could really benefit from something like that. So, and I'm sure my wife would love it. So I'm going to have to check that out.
No, it's a good one.
Awesome. Well, next question. So you're somebody who, like me, has worn different hats throughout your career. You've been a founder, you've been an operator, you've been an investor. What's one very specific lesson that you've learned from each of those stops in your career?
As a founder, you want to maximize staying power. Like, how much time do you have to pursue whatever your idea is? Because the best description of a startup I ever got, actually the person who introduced me to GameChanger, who's a VC, was a group of people working on a hard problem for a very long period of time. Mm-hmm. So can you stay financially liquid, mentally engaged? Can you manage the rest of your life? So you need staying power. You have no idea how long it'll take. You'll read a news article about the 1-year startup success. That's like 0.0001% of them. Mm-hmm. As an operator, the only thing you can control, some people say you can control expenses and not revenue. The only thing you control is how hard you work. We will never, ever, ever, ever be outworked. I will never be outworked. Even if someone has better ideas, we will just keep trying and we'll work harder. And then as an investor, I would say, and of course, kind of with the entrepreneurial kind of early stage bent that I'm passionate about, is we bet on people. And they don't have to be people who've done something before. You say, oh, okay, I'm betting on a repeat person. But it's the conviction in the idea. And by the way, that's how we make initiative bets. Internally, I'll say to people, and I'll be like, I'm going to tell you if I would give you my money for this project that you want to do at GameChanger, or would you put your own money into this initiative? Mm-hmm. And that works even if it's not investing in a new business. It's investing in your own internal initiatives. But I have to see the conviction. I'll read the deck. I'll hear the presentation. And then just look at me in the eyes, and on video call or in person. I need to see that they believe. And that's how I operate with the people I'm accountable to at Dick's Sporting Goods, is I won't ask them to back us on an initiative unless I have absolute conviction. And I think we have a trust with each other that's how we're going to approach those things.
Yeah, a lot of great lessons in there that resonate with me. I mean, one thing I've always said throughout my career is bet on people, because people are a leading indicator of success. So yes. I think that's a big one. I loved your point around staying power, especially as an early stage startup. Like, nothing else matters if you run out of cash. So you got to manage your cash flow, and you got to manage your life to be able to keep yourself in the game. And then your point around just outworking people. I mean, and as somebody who's at a sports startup, I feel like that is very authentic, right? But that's the athletes that we love most. There's talent, but there's also work ethic. And and some of the best athletes of all time weren't necessarily the most talented. They had a lot of talent, but they outworked everyone else, and that goes a long way.
Exactly. Yeah.
A couple more here. What sports do your kids play, and do they use apps or other technology for any of those sports?
Both of them, they're teenagers, high school, middle school. They've gravitated to racket sports, and actually, it's more on a personal level. They play squash, which I introduced them to, and my dad played when he was around, and it's sort of a sport that's stuck with me as I've grown up. And so the best part of that is that they play, on the team, but that we can also play together, the three of us, which is very, very cool for me. And racket sports are underinvested, even relative to team sports on tech. So there's some cool startups I've heard about working on this. I'm out in the valley, but it's not something GameChanger does. And then they use like a registration pregame website that just feels like it should be a lot better. So maybe squash and tennis and all those sports become part of the GameChanger home of youth sports at some point in the future.
Yeah, I have to say, I've always loved racket sports. I've never gotten deeply into them, but I've played a bit of tennis and squash over the years, and they're a lot of fun. Squash in particular, I love because I love strategy, and I just feel like there's so much strategy in squash. There's all these different angles and ways to think about how to win, and
it's a sport where which might be different in certain sports, where your age has no relevance to your ability to win a match. And I regularly would lose to players far older than me into this day. It's about strategy and the physical exertion. The better player will exert themselves a lot less physically because of strategy.
Yep.
And it's almost like you need to be able to see the angles. And I mean, the joke is if you're really much better than your opponent, you'll just stand in the middle and they'll be running back and forth. But I love it for that. And it's been a great, especially as the kids have gotten busier as they get older, it's a great thing for us to spend time together doing.
Yeah. I had Albert Chang, who's the head of growth at chess.com, on the podcast a while back, and I've always loved chess. And to me, if there was a physical sport that came closest to chess, it probably would be squash.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah.
Well, last question. What's one challenge and one opportunity of building products for families and kids?
So one challenge, and I mean this on a holistic level, is you make a promise, you call it a brand promise or a product promise to the ecosystem, which is the whole family. Even if it's an education app and a kid is using it or a teacher is using it. And that promise is inherent. Yeah, you might say something to them around the quality, around privacy, around data security, around just interaction, right? Not making it a good experience, making it a wholesome experience. That is permanent. And often, as I said, is unspoken. It isn't about what you say to your users. You just have to do it without them telling you. And so I think that is a deep element of our culture, even if, it isn't like written in something we say to them. And I only view it as a challenge because in general, anyone, like you said, anyone building for this space should just embed that up front. If you embed it up front in your thinking, then it doesn't become a challenge. It's just something you do. The opportunity that I think is, and we talked earlier about like the two-sided market or coaches and families. And this comes from having worked at GameChanger. The adult fan, family, parent was the user, and the coach was on the other side. Even in the history of the 10, 15 years of GameChanger, even in the time I've been here, the use of mobile devices and smartphones and all that by children has increased. And that's a whole separate debate. But high school kids in particular are a user persona for GameChanger when they never used to be. Yep. So I think that's a really interesting opportunity. What can you build for the for the high school athlete, the high school age athlete, not just for their families? Kids will use the app because their parents signed up, but can we do something wholesome and productive and beneficial directly for the kids? Maybe it's around more sharing of content. So that's a cool opportunity, I think, going forward.
Well, I think that's a great note to end on. And I'm somebody who, both my parents played sports. I played sports growing up. It had a huge impact on my life. And I feel like now more than ever as a parent, I want my children to play sports. Doesn't matter which sport, but I just feel like there's so much value that comes out of getting outside, exerting yourself, challenging yourself, and being part of a team that teaches valuable life lessons. So thank you for all the work you and the team at GameChanger are doing. Any final notes you want to leave the audience with before we wrap up here?
Well, I just want to say how excited we are here in 2026 to deliver an experience like never before for GameChanger families and coaches. And I hope our user community sees that we are in this for a lifetime. Like, we're going to keep innovating. We're going to keep investing, whether that's in diamond sports or basketball or other sports. Every year, a cohort of kids graduate to college age and a cohort join elementary school age. So we're in this for a lifetime. And I know that culture and mentality is pervasive, not just at GameChanger, but our parent company, Dick's Sporting Goods. So I want our users to know that that we're there with them. And the other thing I want to say is one of the highlights of the last 18 months of working at GameChanger has been meeting you, Phil, and just in awe of the work that you did previously, the work you're doing for your clients, and just and then also the business that you're building, because the impact is so direct. I think I hope every one of your customers just sees it, and we saw it, instantaneously. So thank you for your contribution to the app and consumer, ecosystem, and it's been really great to get to know you, and I love everything that you're doing.
Well, thank you so much. The feeling's certainly mutual, and I'm wishing all of you the best of luck on this journey you're on, revolutionizing the world of youth sports through technology. It's an exciting vision, and I'm looking forward to seeing it play out. Thanks, Samir.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks again to RevenueCat for sponsoring this episode. If you're building a subscription app, you can use RevenueCat to power purchases, optimize paywalls, offer discounts, handle refunds, manage customer data, run A/B tests, generate insights, and unlock more revenue. I work with dozens of subscription apps, and most of them are already using RevenueCat to power their businesses. Learn more at revenuecat.com/subversive.